Winning the economic lottery, it sounds like an absolute dream come true, right? But what if I told you that for a surprising number of people, it's the worst thing that could possibly happen to them? Let's dive into the shocking and often tragic reality of sudden wealth. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1977. This number, 2.8 million pounds, which is about $8 million in today's money, lands in the lap of a brilliant 27-year-old barrister named Clarissa Dickson Wright. She was already a huge success, earning a top salary with a stellar career. This money should have meant total freedom for the rest of her life. But this is where the story just goes completely off the rails. Just 5 years later, 5 years, every single penny of that fortune was gone. Clarissa, the brilliant lawyer, was homeless, living on the streets of London. How does that even happen? What's so tragic is that Clarissa's story isn't some bizarre one-off event. It's actually a scarily common pattern. So we're going to look at her story, plus 2 others, to really understand the path that leads from incredible fortune to absolute ruin. So first we have Clarissa, who we'll call the griever. She was at the absolute top of her game, making £100,000 a year back in the 70s, which was just a massive salary. But, and this is the key, she got her inheritance at the exact moment she was crushed by grief over her mother's death. That combination of money and pain, well, it turned out to be explosive. Then you've got a totally different character, John Hervey, an English aristocrat. On the surface, he looked like the opposite of a cautionary tale. He inherited millions, but then he shrewdly invested in oil and real estate and grew it to over $65 million in today's money. He really seemed to have the golden touch, right up until the moment he didn't. And finally, let's meet Graham Roos. Here's a guy working 2 jobs, just trying to scrape by, when suddenly he inherits $750,000. So what does he do? He immediately quit his jobs and just dove headfirst into this non-stop 3-year party, all funded by his new money. So what connects these 3 very different people? Well, it isn't a math problem, it's a psychology problem. It turns out our brains are just not wired to handle the kind of seismic shift that comes with a giant windfall of cash. Let's break down the mental traps that led them straight to ruin. First up is something called the infinity illusion. To Clarissa, 2.8 million pounds felt endless. It's such a huge number, you can't even imagine it running out. So she started with lavish parties, first-class travel, but that spending just kept accelerating. And pretty soon, what seemed like an absurd amount to spend in a month became her new normal. And that infinite money started to disappear at a terrifying speed. And this leads right into the next trap, the hedonic treadmill. You know that incredible thrill you get from a big new purchase? Well, that feeling fades. You always go back to your normal level of happiness. So to feel that high again, you need to buy something bigger, more expensive. You end up constantly chasing a thrill that you can never quite catch again. Graham Roos summed it up perfectly. He said he was renting an audience, not making friends. The parties, the trips, the fancy lifestyle, it all felt like he was living the dream. But in reality, it was just a countdown to 0. The nightmare was that he was totally blind to the damage he was doing until it was way too late. And it doesn't stop there. Other traps just pile on. You get this huge identity crisis. Who am I now that I'm rich? You start attracting enablers, people who disappear the second the money does. And for Clarissa, the biggest trap of all was grief. She was literally using the money to try and fill a hole in her heart that could never be filled. And that just fueled her spending and her alcoholism. Now, these stories feel pretty extreme, I know, but they are not outliers. They are, terrifyingly, the norm. They're all part of a predictable and shockingly common pattern of wealth destruction. And the hard data is just staggering. Take a look at this. Studies show that 70%, 7 out of 10 lottery winners have lost everything or are bankrupt within just 5 years. This isn't just a few sad stories. It's a statistical probability. And it's the exact same story with inherited wealth. You've probably heard the old saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Well, guess what? The data proves it. It's true. 70% of a family's fortune is gone by the 2nd generation, and a whopping 90% has vanished by the 3rd. The money almost never lasts. So here's the final scorecard for our 3 stories. 3 different fortunes, 3 slightly different paths, but they all ended up in the same exact place. Total financial ruin. We're talking homelessness, prison, overwhelming debt. And John Hervey's story is just It's so heartbreaking. He went from 65 million to nothing and died broke at just 44 years old. So, how do you avoid this fate? How do you take these awful cautionary tales and turn them into a blueprint for survival? Let's flip this around and look at what you should do if you ever find yourself with a sudden fortune. The plan is surprisingly simple, really. First, and this is the most critical step, do absolutely nothing for at least 6 months. Let your brain catch up. Next, hire a team of pros, people who you pay for their advice, not people who make a commission off you. You have to address your mental health right away. Money makes underlying issues worse, not better. Then you create barriers to protect you from your own worst impulses, things like trusts. And finally, if you upgrade your life, do it slowly, incrementally.
So if there is one core lesson to take away from all this, it's this: money is an accelerant. It doesn't solve your problems, whether that's grief, addiction, or deep insecurity. It just pours gasoline on them. It gives you unlimited resources to act on your worst impulses with zero guardrails.
And that leaves us with one final haunting question. Clarissa did eventually find sobriety and build a new career for herself. But was she better off for getting the money? Would she have avoided all that pain and found happiness sooner without the inheritance? Or was hitting rock bottom the only thing that could have possibly saved her? We'll never know for sure, but her story is a powerful, powerful warning about the true price of wealth.